Hop in, Michael. I think we can catch them.
Hey folks, I'm here with another video having to do with our screen used kit car. Specifically, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the overhead console and the lower console. If you remember, this car was a stunt car used on the show, and as such it didn't actually have an upper console and a lower console in it. Those parts were added after the show ended by the studio before it went on display. So there's been something that has been bothering me about the overhead console, specifically the overhead console in this car, since I restored it back in 2011. Was it 2011? I think it was. Boy, where'd those 12 years go? So I want to kind of go over the overhead console that's in it now, what bothers me, what we're going to do about it. And then I also wanted to show you the lower console in this car. So currently the lower console in this car is a complete replica piece. And we decided, I've never been happy with that either. So I decided time to switch that out with something a little bit more authentic. So we're going to show you some of our screen used lower consoles as well. I say consoles because we have a couple screen used lower consoles, and we're going to make a mold of one of those, pop a copy of that in here so we have a screen accurate lower console in here. So going to go over those things and talk to you a little bit more about the insert dash and the insert lower console, because we've got something really cool planned for that. So before we begin, check out this awesome coat. This is not a crew jacket. This one is a replica crew jacket. And take a look at this. It's got my name on it. We've got the Knight shield with the Knight Rider script, and of course, the giant shield on the back. This was my favorite crew jacket out of all the crew jackets they offered on the show back in the 80s. I do have an original one that I've worn on this channel before, but I thought I needed one that I could just wear and not worry if it gets torn or dirty or ripped. And so came up with this design. And the cool thing is, if you guys want one of these crew jackets with your name on it, or if you want a Mr. D's Marine shirt or all kinds of other cool swag, head over to knightriderhistorians.com. Check out our store. We have all of this and more. Don't want to miss it. All right, so here's the console that's currently in this car. Now, a couple things to note. This is not an original console. This is an exact replica of the console that was in this car whenever it was used on display, both at the studio and down at the World Expo in Australia. This is an exact recreation. We know who has the original console, but they're not giving it up. So, the main problem with this console is the fact that this car has aftermarket T-tops. So, when this car was used on the show, we mentioned this before, this was actually a hardtop car and had the fake strips on the top to make it look like T-tops during drive-bys. Whenever the show ended and the studio wanted to put this on display, they contracted with a place called Pacific T-Top in Huntington Beach, California. And Pacific T-Top was one of the installers for the Cars and Concepts T-Tops, which is what these are. So they installed these about 1987, and the Cars and Concepts T-tops are fairly different than the stock GM ones. And the biggest difference is in this gap right here. These T-tops are a little bit shorter, so there's more of a windshield. There's more body between the windshield and the T-top than in a factory car. And that's best shown when this console is up here. You see the front edge of this, and you see how this front edge is supposed to wrap around this headliner and meet up at the windshield. That's why, combined with the clear windshields that they put in all of the cars to prevent you know, the cameras from blocking anything on the inside. That's why on the show cars you can see the console, right? You see it wrap around the top. But this car currently does not have a console that wraps around. But it did on the show. We can see screenshots of this car when it was a hardtop, and they had a console in there, and it actually wrapped around the front of the headliner. And that has bugged me since I restored the car, that this console, that when you look at it from the outside, it looks like it doesn't have a console in there. And I really, really want to rectify that. But it's easier said than done, right? So I already have, the reason I'm holding this is because I have it unscrewed already. So let's take it down so you can get a better, kind of a better look at it. So this console is much like, again, like the one that was in here when it was on display, is all static, right? These do not press. These are keypad buttons that are glued in place just like they were when it was on display. This keypad, these press, they don't do anything. These don't light up. Pretty basic stuff. But the problem is this console, this particular one was not molded from an original. In fact, there are no overhead consoles that were molded from original, no replica ones that are molded from original yet. We'll get to that in a minute. So the problem is trying to install this on a car that doesn't have factory GMT tops because it isn't long enough, right? And if we move this up, you can see we're gonna have an issue with this whole piece hitting right here. We'd have to trim this way down. It would just look really weird. So trying to figure out a good balance, because I don't want to keep it like this. I don't want to cut this so it wraps around. So I think what we're gonna end up doing is, and I'll take you in to show you this, we've got two original season 3 and 4, actually season 2, 3, and 4 upper con. Actually, we have 3 of them if you count the one that's in our other original. That is an original overhead console. But one of those 3 is going to be a perfect candidate after some work to sand it down and to mold it. And you'll see why I have to sand it down in a few minutes. But I think the plan is we're going to make a mold of it, pop a copy off, and then what I'm thinking about doing, you guys can let me know if you can think of a better way to do this. I was thinking about taking one of those copies, slicing it right here, and opening this up a little further. So that way we cover this whole area right here, and we have full coverage. I think that's probably gonna be the only way to kind of make this look good on the inside and look good on the outside. So what I want to do is let's go and take a look at the screen used console that we have, which we've shown on the channel a few times. I don't know how in depth we've got on it, but I'll show you the other console and kind of show you the plans for that console. All right, let's take a look. All right, so a number of years ago, we acquired this lower console. This is an original lower console, or upper console, excuse me, from the show. It was not one of the hero consoles with all the lights and all the buttons. In fact, if you look, these parts have never been drilled out. And you can see in the back, they've never been drilled out either. So the story of this console is, this would have been in one of the T-top stunt cars, right? Because in a lot of the stunt cars, what they would do is they would take a blank console straight out of the mold and just shove it up there. Again, just for quick shots going by so they could see that, you know, it kind of looked like KITT, right? It had the console in there. But what happened was, after the show ended and before all the cars were crushed, some parts were scavenged from some of those various cars. And this is one of those parts. This one ended up in the season 3 and 4 hero car after the show ended. whenever it went on display on the tour circuit to World of Wheels, to local malls, things like that in the late 80s, early 90s. And what they did was they cut the center out. They put, again, fake buttons in here. They never cut anything else. They just glued buttons on these panels and off it went. Well, in 2002 or 2004, Mark Scrivani of Mark's Custom Kits had an opportunity to work on this car. And when he worked on it, this console was replaced with one of his. So we acquired this from Mark a number of years ago, and we're able to verify its authenticity, you know, all the stuff that we've kind of become famous for. And it's really interesting because this console's super heavy. It's got metal plates in here, wood. So it was built, it's very heavy duty, very stout, you know, no flex at all. So I've been sitting on this thing for years and years, and sometime before we got it, an attempt was made to strip it of all of the paint, and in doing so, there were different layers, like none of it was smooth, still none of it is smooth. You can see all the different layers on here, Bondo layers and multiple paint layers, and it was just a mess. And since it had been modified so much from its original use, I think it makes sense to get this smoothed out, get all these layers removed, get it smoothed, maybe even get the center either filled back in or put putty in here, and use this as a base to make a mold for, you know, it'll be the first screen use upper console mold that's been made. And then from there, we're going to use this to make some copies specifically so we can use them on our screen use kit. So that's kind of the plan for this. All right, so fast forward, and we've come a long way with this original screen use overhead console. It was not easy. This thing was a mess from previous caretakers, stripping paint. There were multiple layers, chips, cracks. You saw the video, it was terrible. So we got it all smoothed. I primed it once, and you can see there were pinholes and other little stuff, so I used some glaze on that, got that smooth, and then working on getting this center section filled back in. Like I said, when this was on the show, it was a plug that was up on the roof of one of the stunt cars. It never had any buttons or lights or anything in it. So we're basically restoring it back to the condition it was in when it was used on the show. And as a bonus, which is really cool that we're able to do this, because now we're going to have a perfect piece to make a mold. One of our goals, our personal goals, is to build up a Knight Rider Historians mold inventory. All of the original parts we want to get molded, just for, not to sell, just for you know, just to have as historical documentation, I guess, in case something ever happens to any of the original parts, we want to do that. So an original season 2, 3, 4 overhead console has never been molded before, not to my knowledge at least, and every single one that's out there is not exact. There are ones that are very, very close, but you put it next to a true original and there are differences. So we are going to finish getting this smoothed out, make a mold of this for us to have. And what's great is this is going to end up, a copy of this is going to be used for one of our original cars for the overhead in that, which you saw at the top of this video. So yeah, that's the overhead. So got to finish smoothing it, prime it one more time, make sure it's perfect, then it's going to get molded. All right, that's the overhead. Now, let's go ahead and talk about the lower consoles. So the lower console that we currently have in this car, none of it is original. This is all replica. This is Knight Design stuff from, gosh, 15 years ago, 10, 15 years ago. And it's nice, but it is not completely accurate and kind of not totally what we're going for. So, like I said, we've got two original screen-used lower consoles. And recently we had a mold made of one of those lower consoles. So we're going to use that, pop a copy, and get an original one in here. This one's close, but the shape's just a little bit off. And we had to redo the bezel too, because this bezel is incorrect for the screen-used one. So we're going to replace all of this with more accurate lower console pieces, and we'll get it wired up so it actually turns on with the dash, which just never got around to doing. But we're also going to work on the insert dash. So we'll show you those here in a minute. I'm sorry, the insert lower console. We'll show you those in a minute and kind of show you kind of what the plan is for that. So we own two original season 3 and 4 lower consoles from the show. And for those of you guys who have watched this channel for a while, you've seen both of these original consoles on the show. This one was out of one of the cars. You can see it's it has some damage, right? It has black paint on it, but it's all chipped. Fiberglass is in good shape. Notch cut out of the back there. Got that one. And then this one is super interesting. This is actually the insert season 3 and 4 lower console. So much as we have the insert season 3 and 4 dash, which again, you might have seen on this channel a while ago, and I really need to get back to working on that, but got a semi outside. Anyways, this is actually the lower console from the insert dash. This is the one, anytime you saw a close-up of the lower console in the 3rd and 4th seasons, you were looking at this exact piece. And notice how it has these wings on the bottom. You know, this one does not, this one does. These wings were added specifically for the season 3 and 4 lower console, because whenever they built that insert dash and the insert lower console, they didn't use, like, none of those pieces were in a Trans Am. They were just built on a soundstage. For the first 2 years, whenever they had the insert lower console, that was actually placed on an 82 Trans Am lower console, a factory lower console. But for seasons 3 and 4, they ditched that original lower console and they built like a wooden console almost, a long wooden box. This would go on top and it would screw in on both sides. And if you look, especially at the Blu-ray caps of when you see the close-up of the lower console, you can clearly see that you can see these flanges down here and how they wrap over. I don't think the screw holes were in there when it was in an insert lower console. I think it just fit down on top of this wood box, because remember, it wasn't in a car, it didn't need to be secured down. They needed probably an easy way to remove it and service it and things like that. These screws were added whenever, or the screw holes were added whenever this console got put into our screen used car when it was on display at the studio. They put this on, they wanted it screwed down so no one could, you know, make off with it. And over the years, the electronics and everything, you know, kind of went missing. The studio did put these less than accurate electronics in here, something like, let's see if I forget exactly how they were, but something along the lines of this, right? So they had electronics in there. They weren't nearly accurate to the show, but who was counting, right? Now, this console, the person we got it from, I believe he said he cut and smoothed this off, because the piece that this came out of is the same one that this came out of. But if you look at it, See how one is much longer than the other? This one originally had this extra piece on the bottom, but it got cut off and smoothed at some point. So we're doing some research now. You watch the screenshots, and I'm pretty sure it had this full piece. So what we're gonna end up doing is, during the restoration of this, we're probably gonna graft on the missing piece back here and get this back to the condition it was in. We have big plans for these two consoles. And actually what we recently did was we took this console, because it's the most complete, and we put a filler piece in here and filled this in temporarily. And actually we made a mold of this because, just like I was saying, we're trying to get molds of all of the original parts just to have them. So pulled one of those pieces out, and this is a copy of this original right here. And you can see here, if you look closely, this is all rough here. This is by no means a perfect mold. And we don't want it to be perfect, right? I mean, it had some imperfections here, although maybe we do want it perfect. I don't know, we'll get there. So the plan for this specific console, I'm actually gonna be doing 3 lower consoles. This one, this replica shell, is actually gonna end up in our screen used car. The console that's in our screen used car currently is actually a Knight Designs 3rd and 4th season lower console shell and electronics. And it's really, really close to original. It's very close, but it's an original car. We want to have as many original parts or molded from original parts in it as we can. So we're going to be taking this and updating it. And of course, one of the problems we had is the Knight Designs electronics and the bezel don't fit in here because this is a different size than the Knight Design stuff. So I had to redesign all of that stuff. So, kind of give you a sneak peek here. So this is our reproduction bezel. And if we look at it here, it actually fits in perfectly in this console. And just to kind of give you an example, this is a Knight Designs one, and you can just see they're so close, but the Knight Designs is just a little too big, and it's not rounded in the right places. I mean, it's so close, so close, but few details and the size, we just couldn't make it work. So step 1, we're taking this console with our new bezels, getting them in there, and we are going to use some of the Knight Designs, like the floppy disk and the radio piece that we're scavenging from our other lower console. Well, actually, we already started. So you can see here, we've got some of this stuff already transferred over to our new bezel here. So this is going to go, once I get this cut out, in here, this is going to be our about as accurate as you can get lower console that we're going to put in our screen used kit, which is going to be awesome. So you might be asking yourself, well, why are we doing 3? Well, one of the reasons, you know, we thought about putting this console, which is actually screen used in our screen used car, but the main reason we're not specifically is because we need to put the window switches here on this arm, and this particular console never had those window switches cut out here. And to have it work in our car, we got to cut the window switches out, and we're not about cutting or damaging original parts. So that's why we're using a replica shell that we can cut and not worry about it. This piece we're going to leave as is with the paint, but I do want to build another set of electronics in here just for display. So when we display this, it'll actually have something in here and it won't just be open. But probably the neatest thing we're going to do is with the insert lower console. So I mentioned before about the insert lower dash, which is right there, which you can't see. How it's not going to end up going back in a car, simply because it doesn't fit properly and it just is not going to work. And some of those original electronics boards are very delicate because they're so old and they shouldn't be exposed to the vibrations of a car and to the heat and the cooling and all that stuff. So I decided, why not recreate the insert dash as it was at the studio on a soundstage? Let it have the functionality where you can run the digits up and do everything that you could do on the soundstage. And then of course it morphed into, well, if you're going to do that, might as well build the center section too, the center console. So my idea, at least in my head, is to build this all on some kind of a movable cart. So you could actually take the insert dash with the lower console on a cart with wheels, take it places. We also have an original untouched PMD seat from the show. I thought that'd be great to put in this display. So what we're going to do with this is we're going to recreate the lower console, but this is going to be a little bit different because we're not going to use you know, replica floppy drives, replica radios. Oh no, we're using original floppy drives and original radios. One of the reasons that I think that the studio didn't put the 3rd and 4th season console on a factory Trans Am lower console is because they needed certain parts of the radio and the disk drive not to work, but they needed to be able to put a floppy disk in here. They need to have a cassette eject out of here. And if they just cut off the top here, it's going to make it a lot more difficult. So I think what they did is they actually had these parts inserted here and they hung down too far to use a factory lower console. So that's why they just built it out of wood, put a giant cavity under there and could put these pieces in. So when all is said and done, this is going to be about as accurate as you can be to what they had at the studio on the lower console insert lower console. So that's kind of where we're going with this stuff. Now you might be asking yourself, when are we going to do this? I don't know. There's so much, so many projects going on, but I'm definitely working to get this replica shell made from an original with the electronics in our car. This is the priority. We're gonna get this done, and then we'll probably start on these other consoles at some point soon. The weather's starting to turn colder here, so this is a great indoor project. All right, so continuing on talking about the insert lower console that we're going to build to mimic the one that was on the soundstage. As I said, the season 3 and 4 insert lower console didn't sit on a factory Trans Am lower console. It was a custom piece, probably made out of wood, that they built probably so the radio and the tape drive could be put in here and actually somewhat utilized. So one of the other changes they made for season 3 for the lower console is the gear shifter. For seasons 1 and 2 on the insert panel that they use, they actually use a factory Trans Am gear shifter. And all they did is black out the Pontiac emblem on the button on the top. But for season 3, they changed it out a little bit. I'm not totally sure why, but they kept the same shifter housing, but they put a button that stuck out of the top. Maybe just to give it a little more character, I don't really know. But we wanted to recreate that for this insert console. Now there's only one person that makes replica steering or replica knobs, and especially makes the knobs in the season 3 configuration. That's Billy Chingus. He's a friend of mine, known him for many years, and he makes amazing shifter knobs. So he sent this one over to us, and I wanted to show you it because it's super, super cool. It's made out of billet aluminum, and it'll fit on any 82 to 92 Trans Am shifter assembly, right? Which is neat because those shifter assemblies change, especially in the early years. Like the factory 82 shifter knobs don't fit on 83s and 84s and up without some modifications. But Billy designed this billet aluminum replacement shifter to fit on any of them. It's really, really cool. So it actually comes with 2 buttons. It comes with the stock Trans Am looking button, which would be seasons 1 and 2. And then if you're replicating seasons 3 and 4, it comes with the button that sits up higher. So you can see the difference. This button sits down here, this one sits up higher. And it all just kind of, you can see it's just multiple pieces, all screws into place, install it, and there you go. Our screen used car here, this is actually the factory 1980, this is an 84 model, it's actually an 84 shifter. So we're not going to be switching it out in here because it's an original shifter, we're keeping it original. But we're definitely going to use this on our insert lower console when we get around to building it. So if you guys are interested, again, these are super high quality. These will last longer than your car will last. They're solid billet aluminum as opposed to the factory shifter knobs, which are plastic or whatever. So these will last forever. Very high quality, very smooth, wonderful finish. If you're interested in getting yourself a shifter knob, I'm going to put Billy's contact information down in the description below and across the bottom of the screen right now. Definitely reach out to him. Tell him you saw this on the Knight Rider Historians channel, and he'll hook you up. So that's where we're going with all of these consoles, both the this overhead here, this one we still got to get molded, and then, of course, all of these wonderful lower consoles here. So that's all I got. That's a lot of talking, but you know, for anyone who thinks we're running out of videos to do on this channel, it's probably no one because we keep pumping them out. But if anyone thinks we're going to run out of material, that is not the case. We've got years and years worth of projects. So that's where we're at. So there's going to be much more to come on this stuff as we get this console built. We'll definitely share it with you in a future video and maybe do the install in the original car so you can see it and see where that takes us. All right, guys. Well, I hope you really enjoyed this video. I know I enjoyed, you know, talking to a camera this whole time without any type of feedback. It seems to be what I do, but I appreciate it. Put down in the comments if you like this video. If you didn't like this video, just keep that to yourself. All right, appreciate your time. We'll catch you in the near future.
Hello friends, it's me, KITT. When I'm not out fighting crime, I like to follow my friends at knightriderhistorians.com. Check it out.